You know, I wasn't planning on making a video this week. I'm going out of town, going to see the family. I wouldn't have time to put anything together. I was looking forward to having a week off. Then I saw Encanto. And I feel like it might be the most important Disney film for my generation. I don't say that lightly. We already have Lion King. So, what do I mean by this? Well, let's dive into it. So to make this clear, this is not a review of Encanto. I've tried reviewing things. There are millions of people who do it a lot better than I do. What this is going to be an analysis of the main theme. But if you are curious of what I thought of it, 4 out of 5, I thought it was really good. Music by Lin-Manuel Miranda, of course those are going to be really good. Loved all the characters, I thought they were all really cool. Really cool. I liked it. But that is not what we are here for today. So, it should go without saying that we're going to go into a lot of spoilers in this video. So if you don't want any spoilers, pause the video, go see the movie. It'll be here when you get back. Again, this is your spoiler warning. We're going into it in 3, 2, 1. So, what I think the main theme of Encanto is breaking the generational curse. Now, what I mean by that is there are many families out there who are broken. They have drifted apart for one reason or another. And usually is because of some abuse by parents or grandparents or any members of the family. Now, luckily, I have a very loving family. I have to say that. I'm seeing them this weekend. But I have had many friends who, for one reason or another, just drift away from their family because of this generational divide that we have. My generation will look at something like, beating your kids and be like, why are we doing this? This is seriously messed up. They'll hear the reason of, well, it's just how we've always done it, and be like, that's stupid. And you see that in Encanto a lot. Obviously this family loves each other. It's certainly not that bad. It is not on that level. But it is a matter of having this expectation, this lofty expectation from your family and all the pressure that causes. The magical family, are this beautiful, perfect, gifted family. They help out the town that they live in with all their gifts. But, underneath all that, there's some tension between some of the family, which is rather poignantly, made a metaphor in when the house starts cracking, and we see that in Bruno's lair that he's been hiding out in for years and years and years. He's been trying to, fix all the cracks in there. So really good metaphor there. But in particular, you see this pressure from this family on 4 different characters. First and foremost is Bruno, the estranged uncle of the family who's been missing for years. His power is that he's able to see into the future, and a lot of people were getting mad at him because he would see something bad happen, and then it would happen, and they would blame him. The most poignant example of this happens in the song We Don't Talk About Bruno, where Peppa talks about how Bruno shows up to her wedding, says, hey, kind of looks like rain. She starts freaking out, and because her power is she's able to control the weather, because she's freaking out, the wedding is a wash. They get hit by a hurricane because of that. And there's several other examples of that happening in that song. But I wanted to point that one out because it's brought up later in the film when the family is eventually reunited. Peppa asked Bruno, why did you say there's going to rain on my wedding day? And Bruno essentially says, I can see you're freaking out and I know how your powers work. And there's one important detail about Bruno's powers that they show in the film, and that's that his power doesn't activate at will. He can't just go, wah, and see into the future. It's not even like a That's So Raven kind of thing, where his powers just kind of go off, see something in the future, and it's like, oh, okay, this is happening. He has to do like a full-on ritual to activate his powers. Now, that might be partly because, well, it's a movie, we need these powers to further the plot, and it's better to show, not tell. But it's also a matter of, Bruno isn't just going around saying these things are happening, these big omens of doom. He's using his powers and his reputation kind of warn people. It's like, hey, you're eating a lot there, guy. You might want to lay off of that, or you're going to get fat. And then the guy gets fat, and it blames Bruno because, well, it's all his fault. And it pretty much drives him to almost insanity. It's a plot point that when Mirabelle, we'll get to her later, doesn't get her power, the family asks him to see, hey, what's going on with this? Is everything okay? He goes, has a vision of, a bad timeline, essentially. And he's like, I'm going to get blamed for this. Rather than, seeing this as okay, this is something we can use to help avoid this. It's like, no, if I tell them that this bad thing is coming, I'm going to get blamed for this. So he goes off the radar for a bit rather than, giving them that warning to help avoid this eventual disaster because this pressure just got to him. The next one that I want to talk about is Lusa? I hope I'm pronouncing that right. Lusa is the big, strong one. Her power is the most helpful around the village day to day. And her first extended scene is just her walking around town, having a million people asking, hey, Lusa, do this, do this, do this. And this is happening after, essentially, the inciting incident. This is when things are starting to go wrong. And Lusa is starting to notice she's not as strong as she normally is. And it's kind of freaking her out a little bit. And then she goes into this song about, how much pressure she is under as, the person who's able to normally carry these burdens, no problem. What happens if that all goes away? What if, I crack or I fumble or can't do this? So it's just a sight into the pressure that she is under, that she has been put in by her family and this town to never stumble, never fall, always be strong. Then we have Isabelle, who's the pretty, perfect, archetypical Disney princess, except she's not a princess character. She's the one who's able to grow flowers. And she's always described as perfect, blah, 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 blah. And she has this real conflict with Mirabelle. Because, she's always put up as perfect. She kind of has, that complex. But we see late on in the film when Mirabelle goes to talk to her to essentially try to mend those fences, that the first time that she makes something imperfect, in this case it's a cactus that's, not perfectly formed, it's a little lopsided, it's something that's not perfect. That is the first time in her life she's ever made something not perfect. And she loves it. And I'm like, oh my god. What else can I do? That's literally the name of her song. What else can I do now that I don't need to focus on being perfect? And she goes full rebellious child, and I love her for it. Honestly, she's great. I love that. I love that for her. She deserves it. But it's just another example of having, that expectation from the previous generation. She's literally pretty much going into an arranged marriage, more or less. It's kind of played off at first. It's like, oh yeah, it's a mutual thing, blah, 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 blah. No, it's more or less an arranged marriage. And she wants no part of it. Meanwhile, the character of Dolores, who's actually in love with the person that Isabelle is going to be marrying, is just kind of like pushed off to the side because her power, she has a power, but it's not the best power. Her power is enhanced hearing. She can hear pretty much anything, and most of the time it is used for plot purposes. Poor Dolores. That girl has definitely heard her parents have sex. But that's just another thing, is because she's not, the face of the family, essentially. She won't be the face of the family. She's pushed aside despite her feelings for this guy. And that brings us to our main character, Mirabelle, who, as you might have seen from the trailers, doesn't have any special powers. Now, she's the only one in her family who doesn't have any special powers. At least the only one who didn't marry into it. And from minute one, it has kind of been established that this kind of sucks for her. And after she sings her first initial big opening Disney song, this guy comes up and is like, I got you this, not special because you're not special and blah, 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 blah. That guy's such a jerk. Why would you do that? But, it's established from minute one that she's kind of the family disappointment. No one's willing to say that because they already have Bruno as the designated dunk on for that, but everyone's just kind of like, Mirabelle is like, I get trying to help, don't though. And there's a moment where the youngest, Antonio, I think it is, yes, Antonio, he's about to go get his power, but he's afraid. He wants Mirabelle there beside him, and she comes out, leads him up to the door, and everyone's just like, oh no, last time she was here, this did not go well. And it's just this thing of she's always trying to help, but people are just constantly saying, he's like, no, because you're the family disappointment. Again, they never outright say that, but it's always kind of implied, especially with Abuela, the grandmother, who's always been so concerned about the family and their image. The fact that, they have these powers, they're here to help and all that. She's the one putting all this pressure on her and her family. And in the end, that's how everything gets resolved. It's Mirabelle and Abuela talking it out and being able to reconcile, and Abuela essentially saying, I'm so sorry for ever doubting you about all this. And, they rebuild the house because the house collapsed during the climax, of course, during the darkest hour. And that's really the climax of the movie. Mirabelle has figured out what she needs to do to save the magic, to save the day, and Abuela is having none of it and is constantly saying, look, everything that's going on is your fault. It's your fault. You're the family disappointment. Again, she doesn't say that, but it's heavily implied. And that's what causes the house to collapse, and what causes everyone to lose their powers. And Mirabelle runs off. And, everyone's freaking out about this. Abuela is the one who finds her, and they talk it out. They reconcile. Abuela sees that what makes her family special is the family itself. It's not the powers. And she apologizes for putting that pressure on them and for kind of resenting Mirabelle for not living up to that expectation that she had. And that's the reconciliation. That is the end when she comes back with Mirabelle and with Bruno. I mean, we see it. Mirabelle was full on about to leave her family because she didn't fit in there. She didn't meet their expectations. She's not living up to what her family expects of her. This generational curse, essentially. And she's leaving. Like, many people in my generation have left their family behind because of things like this. You know, we get a happy ending because it's Disney, and Abuela does apologize. But Mirabelle was gone. She was out of there. And it really took Abuela to mend that fence. And that's something that I think is important. This whole thing is kind of reinforced by the short that they played before the movie. It was, what was it called? Away from the Tree? Something like that. It was the thing with raccoons. The story for that was, you know, bad dad, you know, kind of, it's like chewing out his son for, like, playing and being curious, almost getting into, getting himself killed. And then we flash forward to the next generation where the kid raccoon is now grown up, has his own kid, and his kid starts acting the same way, and then he starts acting the same way as his dad did, but he catches himself and, you know, readjusts, breaks that cycle of abuse. And that's why I think Encanto is so important. The whole thing is about breaking that generational curse, about having these lofty expectations on you, especially if they don't make you happy. You know, Bruno was just trying his best, was still getting blamed for everything. Lusa, you know, likes being big and strong, but doesn't like having that pressure on her. Isabella didn't like being the perfect child, being put into a marriage she didn't care about. And Mirabelle loves her family. She's glad to be this. But the fact that there's always this underlying resentment that she doesn't have a power, it gets to her eventually. And it's only when she goes to leave that Abuela is like, okay, I'm kind of seeing how everything was wrong, and I'm sorry. So I haven't seen a movie that actually tackles something like breaking this generational curse, at least like this. So I am very glad that Encanto did, because like I said, I know quite a few people who would see this movie and see themselves as Bruno or Lucia or as Isabella or Mirabelle. They would see themselves in one of these characters that had been put in this situation because of their family, and it broke them. So that's what I think that Encanto is something you should definitely see. That was my slightly rambly analysis of Encanto. I am sorry, I only just got out of the movie like an hour and a half ago, and I was like, I gotta talk about this movie. But what did you think of Encanto? Leave your thoughts in the comments down below, and while you're down there, don't forget to hit that like, share, and subscribe button to help this channel grow. We are so close to 500 subs! Come on, let's get there before the end of the year. I'm Christopher Orlando, and I'm really bummed that the Hercules cameo in this movie didn't actually look like Disney's Hercules. You really dropped the ball on that one, Disney. Take care, y'all. One love, don't hurt nobody.